Welcome to Keiser Voices, the story of success, brought to you by Keiser University Graduate School, here where the academic world meets personal triumph. Join us today as we dive into the captivating tales of success.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Keiser Voices. And if you joined us this time last year, you had the opportunity to meet all three of our guests, and we couldn't be more excited to have them all back. So once again, joining us is the infamous Dr. Stefane Dias, who is our program director for the Sports and Exercise Science program here at Keiser University. His colleague, Dr. Dalton Oliver, who is our program director for our online bachelor's degree seeking Sports and Exercise Science program. And our special guest is Dr. Paulo Marchetti, who is joining us from California State University, where he is a full-time professor. He's a supervisor in research in the master's program in Strength and Training and Biomechanics. We've established in previous meetings that me and anything dealing with biology or could lead to biology, those are not my subjects. So I apologize, Dr. Marchetti, if I mispronounce your background, because you have this fabulous background all the way back to the University of Sao Paulo. And we are so honored that you are joining us once again. The other two, we can grab them anytime, but having you come on this episode is always fantastic.
That's great. Thank you, Heather, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. Dalton, it's my colleague for 10 years here at Keiser. It's a pleasure to have him here in this episode. And Marchetti, last year we recorded, but in a different episode. So this will be the first time us three in the same one talking something that we really like, exercise selection for greatness. Actually, Dalton came with the topic and I really like it. So Dalton, you can say something, and Paulo.
Well, if you're going to set a goal, greatness would be it, right? And that's one of my key criteria for picking exercise is the goal.
Paulo Marchetti.
Yep, thank you for inviting me here again. So I'm very pleased to be here and share a little bit what we've been doing here. So thank you very much.
And again, so honored to have you guys on here again, because we've always had good conversations in the past. But Dr. Oliver, you just said something that I really want to start with, that greatness should always be the goal. We often have conversations, and I know this is a little more ambiguous and not just for, your industry, but we always say like pursuing perfection, it's not there. Like you're going to do more harm than good in pursuing perfection. But looking for that greatness whether we're talking about exercise selection or just in general, just in pursuit of goals, is that an obtainable goal?
Well, I agree with you when it comes to communicating visions of athletes, not necessarily their standard, and progress is more what we communicate and instill in them as their standard. Coach, the ideal state would be on our list of things to do, because only from that ideal state can we kind of map backwards and figure out where we are, what we have to do to improve. And I think greatness is a great ideal state. But the ideal state is highly contextualized for the person's characteristics and their own personal goals. So there's a lot of different ways to define greatness, I guess you could say, or the ideal state. But yes, I wouldn't let a lack of achieving greatness or the ideal state kind of hinder anybody or motivate them.
So when someone goes through like the process of selecting an exercise, and we're going to get some really specific here with when we start asking questions to Dr. Marchetti, what process does an individual go through?
Could you, sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, no worries. So I was saying, and I know we're going to get into strength training and some specific questions for you, Dr. Marchetti, for strength training. But before we even get to that piece where we start talking specifics, when we're targeting strength, when we're targeting cardio, when we're targeting, impacting specific muscle areas, what's the process someone should go through when trying to select like the best exercise in order to reach that greatness?
Yeah, I think the first point that we need to understand when we talk about strength training or any other area is that we don't have good or bad things, good or bad exercises. So it depends on the subject, it depends on your client, first of all, right? So for example, people are always trying to find, what is the best of everything, right? So, what is the best exercise? What is the best number of repetitions? What is the best of what is best, heat or cardio or this or that? So it's not so simple. So first of all, it's not so simple. We don't have good or bad stuff, right? So we don't have good or bad exercises. We have exercise that some people need more, and we have some exercise that they are not exactly ideal for some people. Let me give you an example. So when people do, for example, deadlifts, right? So if you have deadlift is a normal exercise, right? So multi-joint exercise is a normal exercise. But if you think about a person with low back pain doing deadlifts, right, with high weights, high velocity, for example. So this is not good for this type of people, right? So with low back pain. So that's the point that we need to start discussing. So this binary idea that this is good, this is bad, is not the right way to think about exercises and the whole rest, right? So it's not this or that. So it depends on the person. It depends how the number of problems that you have, your training status. So you have so many factors that you have to include in your, let's say, in your previous analysis, and then decide what is good and what is bad for that specific person.
Yeah, I can build on that too, if you like.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So thank you, Dr. Paulo. You added to my idea of the ideal state and the defining thing. You added the needs analysis of the client and maybe tracking where they are compared to where they want to be. And if we were going to use your example as back pain, so the ideal state or greatness might be defined as no back pain. So now we can see, okay, well, we're through a needs analysis, what tasks are required of the individual, and what functional limitations and constraints does the individual deal with, and we can start to work through the body joint by joint, and see what are the limitations, what are the limiting factors there, and then by getting more and more discrete indicators or hypothetical rate limiting factors in a way of movement and pain-free movement, we can get more targeted ideas of what to correct and what to train. Something that, before I get to esoteric, something that more of our audience might communicate with or click with is the body composition. So the ideal state might be larger muscle mass and lower body fat. And one of the criteria there would be, or one indicator for selecting a good exercise would be the muscle group. So whether you're looking at function or form, the process that you are looking for, Heather, is pretty similar, just with different descriptors. We want to look, and we want to define that ideal state, because if we don't know how to analyze the client. We don't know how to target the intervention. So by identifying that and then working backwards to see what they can and can't do, or what they, to bounce off Dr. Marchetti's idea of non-binary continuum in a way, what they can do well and what they can't do as well, right? Then we can start to identify the best exercises that are developmentally appropriate for that client, and then slowly scale them up toward the representative demands of that ideal state.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, just to add that, I like the idea that Dalton gives, the needs analysis. This is a very important topic. And many coaches out there, they forget this. And even like influencers or people on the internet, They just say, oh, this is the best exercise, this is the worst exercise. But you forget the population, the individual that's doing this. So the needs analysis will create all this criteria. We'll see, okay, what is your age, your height, your weight, your level of capacity, you know? So all of that stuff we need to take in consideration so we can tell for sure, okay, this is the right exercise for you, or this will be not the most appropriate, like in the example that Marchetti gave, you know, somebody that's already hurting, you know, with the back pain, now trying to do heavy back deadlifts, for example.
Yeah, and if I could, sorry.
Oh, no,
if I could add, nowadays, for example, we have several studies discussing, for example, anthropometry, so dimensions. So, for example, you're doing a deadlift or you're doing a squat. So it's very important nowadays. So this is kind of new, right? But it's not new, but people are discussing more. For example, the length of your femur, the length of your tibia, the length of your torso, even the length of your arm if you're doing deadlifts, for example. These factors are very important to define your initial position, your starting position. So, for example, if you have long arms, so you don't bend too much your torso, so the angle of your hip is not so, let's say, it's not a small angle. So when you have long arms, because you can hold the bar with a more straight spine, let's say that. So, but we have a short arm, so you have to incline more. So the angle of your hip will decrease. So even your anthropometry, so your dimensions, so are very important to define or to be incorporated in your needs analysis. So it's very important too. So nowadays we're discussing more and more, you know, not only the angle of the knee. So for example, let me give you another example in terms of this idea. So even when you do squats, right? So when people are discussing, oh, squats is good for your glute max, squats is good for this or that, or hip thrust, that is more famous now than ever, right? So the point that we are not discussing, and if you check all articles, we have a very short number of, a very small number of articles discussing this point, is the angle of the hip when we talk about squats. So now, for example, if you ask to anyone, okay, so how deep I need to move to do squats, and then people say, okay, put your leg parallel, so your thigh parallel to the floor. Okay, so your leg, your thigh now is parallel to the floor, but how about the angle of your hip? So if I don't know the angle of your hip, I can't, for example, explain what is happening with your glute max and your hamstrings. So all these dimensions and all these factors, they are very important. And for example, if I want to reduce low back pain, so as we discussed before, so if I do, for example, front squat, because front squat, I don't need to bend too much. So I don't need to decrease this angle of my hip. So I can stand a little bit more, right? So I don't need to flex too much. So I'll have a reduction in the for example, the moment arm around the ground reaction force and your spine. So this will reduce, for example, low back pain. So acutely, but this will reduce the problem. So we have so many variables that we are discussing now in terms of biomechanics related to strength training. And all these factors, we need to include all these factors, not only, you know, when we talk about needs analysis, we think about, oh, biomechanics and exercise physiology, like in any type of book, right? So we have, what is the energetic system? So what is the physiology behind? Okay, so in terms of biomechanics, we're discussing these factors like anthropometry or these angles, right? But we need to think when we talk about, for example, low back pain, we have to discuss, for example, day-by-day activities as well. And we don't have this in needs analysis. So we don't, at least we don't have in general. So for example, you have low back pain, but where is this coming from, right? So maybe it's not because you did something wrong in terms of exercises. You did something wrong at home. And we need to understand all these, you know, these prereqs, and that we usually don't have in needs analysis. So we need to add more information there in order to be more assertive. So to be more precise in terms of our prescription.
And I have some. Oh, sorry, Dr. Oliver.
Yeah, no. I just wanted to add that needs analysis too. When I conceptualize a needs analysis, there's two sides to it in my viewpoint, the way I'm thinking of it right now anyway. One is the person, their structural and functional constraints, and the other is of the performance demands. And that's what Dr. Marchetti was actually just alluding to with the daily activities. And those performance demands or daily activity, whatever the person is expected to do, often actually gives us a lot of insight as to what they need to do during those exercises. How deep do they need to squat? Like a powerlifter needs to take the bar pretty low, whereas an offensive lineman, not that low at all. And then somebody, a senior, who just wants to climb the stairs, maybe they don't even need to do squats. So it's when we analyze the representative demands that they're going to have to deal with, and then the individual, we have a whole lot more to tell us what exercises are best and less best.
As we keep speaking, because we're going to get really specific here to some specific types of exercises and strength training, I want to take a moment to emphasize that all three of our guests are certified. They have doctorates. Dr. Marchetti even has a degree in medicine. So what that means is they're qualified experts to have these conversations. So they've also alluded to coaches. And that's because you need to do any of these things safely. And I think all three of you guys can emphasize this for me. We're not talking about looking something on the internet, asking AI for help designing a plan or exercise plan. Like, you should be consulting a professional. And that starts from your physician who sees you regularly to somebody who is certified in this field. And we'll talk a little bit more about the programs later on, but somebody who is certified in these specific areas. So that way you're not just going and doing this exercise that you saw trending on TikTok and hurting and actually being what caused your back to hurt, or, not doing the squat, learning how to use the machinery properly, how to squat properly. You talked about hip alignment. I mean, a lot of people probably just think if they go up and down, that's a squat. And Dr. Marchetti even mentioned, there's a proper form for that.
I would agree. Yes, but is often my response to nowadays. I agree with you that you should always seek out more expert advice, and more advice that also filtered advice, removing the noise, because a lot of people are bombarded by noise about what is good, what is bad, what they should do. But I would encourage people to start trying things slowly. And then as you become acquainted with them, you continue to ask experts more precise questions about these things, especially if you encounter an adverse event. Dr. Marchetti mentioned earlier about acute back pain. Things might trigger back pain, and that trigger that stimulus might either be maladaptive, or in some ways it could be adaptive if done in the right. So many of our exercise strategies may not be as comfortable as others, but we choose them because chronically over time it reinforces skill patterns and movement patterns and things, and maybe the musculature of the body to actually handle that uncomfortable movement or position in the real world. But you definitely shouldn't be trying uncomfortable things if you're not sure of why you're trying them. And plus, we can give you a way better ROI on what you're doing. So even if all of these things feel comfortable, even if you think you're successful, I promise you there is a better solution out there. And with more expertise, you're going to get closer and closer to that optimum exercise prescription. Even effort that people are putting out into things like burpees and planks and running, and then doing power cleans and stuff like that. And that's a lot of effort. And I'd be willing to bet half of the time I could write exercise prescriptions that require way less effort and actually get people closer and closer to the ideal state as they would define it.
So, Dr. Oliver, if you don't mind, I do have, sorry, Dr. Marchetti.
No problem. So no, I just want to add that I think one thing that is important to consider too, so nowadays social media is so huge. right? So, but I think when we talk about all these topics, right? So we need to try to follow people that will present both sides of this coin. So, for example, we have experience as researchers, as professors in this area, and at the same time, we train people. So when we have these two areas together, so it's not always simple to put them together, but when we try to close this gap in between science and hands-on, right? So that's the people that you have to follow. Because it doesn't matter if you stay in the lab for 24/7, you don't have enough experience to, for example, to design a workout sometimes because you're studying something very specific. At the same time, we are seeing more and more people with no experience in science, right? So like, you don't need to be a researcher, of course, but so you need to read science, you need to try to understand science too, right? And not only, go to the gym and do whatever you want or follow, a big guy. And after that, so if the guy is huge, I'm gonna be huge too. And then follow these guys too. So I'm not saying who you need to follow, but the point is, if you want to follow people, right? So to at least to guide you in terms of what you want to do or what you have to do. So you need to find people with these two areas together, right? So people with experience in hands-on and people with experience in science, professors, researchers, both, doesn't matter. But, nowadays people are following more these influencers than, real science, because sometimes they use science in a very bad way to sell something. So they are not trying to help you. They are trying to sell something to you. And that's the problem. I saw a lot of people talking about my articles. And sometimes I was watching these guys talking about my articles and I thought, okay, so did I do that? So this wasn't my conclusion. So do you understand? So sometimes people read just the abstract. Sometimes people don't read anything and just follow people because it's easier, it's faster. But again, so if you really want something good, you need to follow people, who's trying to do both,
Just to add on that, Marchetti, this is one thing I really push in our students. So they get all the theory, all the science, all the articles that we make them read and everything, but go to the gym and try to apply, because now you're going to really see the difference. Because it's one thing, oh yeah, you can do like 10 sets of heavy back squat. And then I ask them, okay, have you ever tried? No, coach. I say, so go do it. And the next day you talk to me and you're going to feel your legs. You're going to need to recover like 2 or 3 days. Now you start understanding, the dimension of that external load, what creates inside of you, like internal load. So that's the whole thing. And right now with the internet, we recorded another episode, guys. You can have a chance to talk about myths and realities of all that what's going on in the training and nutrition, because today it's almost like a wild west. And those influencers, because they have followers, they try talking, like Marchetti said, they get sometimes part of an article, part of the research, take out of the context, and then they say something. And the people are like, oh, no, but that's based on Marchetti's work. No, Marchetti didn't say that. So what you need to do, you go read his article, understand, try to go on the gym, apply to yourself or to your clients. Now you really feel, okay, Marchetti recommend that. I had difficulty here. I had those recommendations, and you start really understanding. So combining the theory with the practical, with the hands-on experience, this is what we try to do here, me and Dalton and Keiser, to be successful, because, it's just getting out of control.
Yeah. Yeah, this is amazing. This is amazing because that's, sorry.
I was just going to add there that I would argue that everybody on Instagram is selling something, and they're all trying to be the thought leader of their tribe, and it's an innate thing amongst all of us. We all want to be at the forefront of whatever the conversation is, but the problem is that I have seen oftentimes, and I'm assuming that these people are certified to begin with, because at the very least, a certification gives you a third-party vetting that you do understand what you're talking about. Because the problem with not understanding what you're talking about is that you don't know that you understand what you talk about. So you end up preaching from the mountaintops these passionate things, and yet the whole time you're just misrepresenting the research that you read. Yeah, so certifications are critical when it comes to verifying and the third-party vetting, and also our colleagues. So I always seek out peers when I assign assignments, when I develop rubrics, things like this, and especially if I were to conduct an actual study. But even those studies, Dr. Marchetti hit it on the head here, even those studies use a particular lens to view that problem of either movement, function, or form. And sometimes when we're viewing things through the lens of function, we're not necessarily best representing form, and vice versa. So somebody may take a very physiological view of how do we develop the chest muscles and the glutes and the hams, but they're not necessarily taking a very mechanical or neuromechanical view at how we develop squatting patterns and lunging patterns that are high quality.
So
Yeah, and
if
if I can add, so I'm really concerned because some certifications that we have nowadays, they're just online quizzes. So we have a quiz and you pay for this quiz, and if you pass, you just receive your certificate. So I think we need more than that, right? So
Yeah,
we need for example, a master's, we need a bachelor, something that, for example, we have, I don't want to name, certifications, but some of them is just, you go online and you answer a quiz. And after that, if you pass, you pay for the certification, and then you receive a certification for 1 year. And then you can go out there and work, right? And so nowadays I have students with more certifications than me, in terms of, okay, I have certification in nutrition, I have another one in this and that. So, okay, but just a quiz. So we have to be careful with what type of certification too.
Yes.
Right, because we have some good ones and we have some that I'm not saying it's not good, but I'm just saying I don't think they have enough in terms of what they've done to really go out there and deal with people, right?
I would say the value, I agree. I would say the value of the certification is you have a lowest common denominator. So you have a minimum requirement for a certification. That's all that you really know from that certification, is that this person met a minimum requirement. And then you're right. I believe that people should continue to invest in their formal education, because again, you have that third party, you have an instructor in front of you, making you aware, and when you get your degree, of the things that you were not aware of. So when you go into Google or any AI, you start asking questions. Those are just questions you were already aware of, categories that you already knew existed. But one powerful role of education is we make you aware of categories you didn't even know existed. And so now you have brand new topics and descriptors and questions to ask. And then partnering that education with the experience, the hands-on experience, because that's critical. And I agree with Dr. Marchetti here. That's not done well enough, because most certifications allow you to do this on your testing template, and they don't even require an in-person type of vetting process. But again, I don't want to undermine every certification. I want to present the value, the thing that it's worth, and it's worth the minimum standard.
Yeah, the point is not undermine anything, in fact. So the point is, if I just have to do a quiz, right? And nowadays, so we need to realize that we just put this quiz in AI and you get all your answers. You don't need to answer all these questions anymore. So if you at least need to read a book, sit down in front of your computer. So like, I don't want to say names, but so in some certifications that you don't have hands-on, but at least you have to go to the place and take your test, and you have to read a textbook at least. So it's totally different than just go to your computer, open your browser, and then download all questions, and then throw all these questions on AI. And after that, get all answers. So they're doing this now. So that's my main concern. So we have some certifications that are good in terms of how they deal with that, and some certifications they are just to make money. Sorry about that, but that's the truth. So, and people are using this, these new strategies nowadays. So we are not dealing with people 10 years ago. So that we didn't have all this, all these facilities to answer all these questions also that we have in some certifications. So that's only my point. My point is we have to be careful because I'm not undermining anything. In fact, I'm just saying that in terms of, first of all, we are dealing with people. We're not dealing with a computer. So if you make a mistake in a computer, you just buy another one. So when you make a mistake with my knee, I can buy another one. That's the problem.
That's a very good point. And just so you guys know, since the undergrad, we prepare students to take the certifications that require a degree. So we try to go to you're not going to say all, but some of the organizations, the National Academy of Sports Medicine, American College of Sports Medicine, National Strength and Conditioning Association. So we prepare our students to go for those certifications to avoid this nonsense that just Marchetti said. So you go there, take the quiz from your home, and then you get certified. Now, the stuff that we teach you is requires hands-on. Even if you go to a testing center, you cannot do the hands-on. They show videos of exercises, and now you need to see. So you really need to know the grip width, the type of exercise, the muscles that are working, what is the mistake. So all of this stuff. So that's the stuff that we work here.
And I apologize, gentlemen. I kind of derailed this conversation, but I wanted to drive emphasis into finding the proper professional, because oftentimes we see these videos of these athletes doing stretches or workouts, and they were designed by a professional who has a combination of the research and the science and understands body movement, who made these specific plans for this specific person. And just because it works for that specific person, it may not work for you. If you look at, we're going to pick on American football group who kicked that amazing long field goal in the Colts football game on Sunday. He's a smaller guy than even their quarterback. I could not imagine the two of them doing the same exercise routine and having success with it without possibly, unfortunately harm. Like Dr. Marchetti said, harm can come from not having the proper people who understand all of it and you not knowing what you're doing. But Dr. Oliver, when we start looking at specific exercises, are there certain exercises that are better for if you have specific goals over others, or is it a combination? And then I really have some specific questions on specific exercises for you guys.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the way that I would grade exercise selection is based on the specificity to that ideal state and the performance demands, and the specificity to the individual client and where they are, their training experience, and then also the context. What do you have to choose from? A lot of people are going to end up also consolidating workouts. So sometimes there's a way to activate more muscle groups within a smaller time frame if you're limited on time. But if you have all day, then there are some ways to break them up quite a bit, but sometimes they don't pay off as much as people think. So it depends on, we can grade how good an exercise selection is if we have those criteria. I guess I could use an example here from bodybuilding or just from body composition, where if somebody is looking to start an exercise routine, they're a beginner, and they go to the gym, say it's a Globo gym, Gold's Gym, some commercial gym, and they want to go squat, but then they don't feel stable under the bar at the bottom of the rep. They're probably not going to challenge themselves very well. So they're not going to reach the overload stimulus that would be required for muscle growth. So arguably for that person, I'd be willing to bet they get more out of some machines than that squat rack, unless they had the time to start to develop the skill set of mastering that squat and becoming comfortable at every point and position of that squat. And even then, if they can, I also want to wonder what the goal was, because there's a limiting factor here when we start to involve compound movements. And in the back squat, this is the squat I'm thinking of, typically it's actually the lower back, even in athletes, or especially in athletes, it's the lower back that holds them back from going from 500 to 600 or 600 to 700. It's not their glutes or their quads, it's their lower back. So for an offensive lineman who needs a strong lower back, that's fine. But if you are a track star or you're going to be a bodybuilder, I may wonder about overloading the glutes through things like Bulgarians or single leg hip thrusts or other things like that. So there's ways to break them up and overload them and then put them back together and reinforce the movement patterns and the movement quality, depending on the goal and the person.
So then, Dr. Dias, if you guys don't mind us getting a little bit even more specific. So, I know we're glancing around, but, and it is very important to take in the individual that you're working with, what their goals are, where the, problem areas possibly could be, I do understand that, but like, when we talk about like, for example, are there best exercises for weight loss? Is there a difference between general strength and specific strength when we talk about strength training? So are there like specific exercises for those types? And I know there's a lot more.
Yeah.
I think these are the most common.
Yeah, just to make it easier, if you're a beginner, you need to find exercises that you know how to do, because sometimes you're a beginner, but you're trying to copy this power clean or clean and jerk, something that's too advanced for you. And then this exercise could be good, yes, but you don't have the capacity to do that. So that end up being a bad exercise for you. So if you're a beginner, you need to find exercises that you know how to execute with the proper form, or at least they're not so complicated. Just like Dalton said, you cannot, if you don't know how to properly do a back squat, you can start maybe with the Smith machine. So it's something that is assisted or those assisted squats. So this way, you're not going to get hurt in the process. So that would be a good starting point. Another thing very important for a beginner, now if their goals is weight loss, now you need to find exercises that work multi-joint exercises. So the most amount of muscle groups at the same time, because this will increase your caloric expenditure. Now the exercise will be more beneficial from you. You don't necessarily need to copy like a bodybuilder now and then do one leg single, you do one leg at a time in the leg extension machine. Imagine really isolating your quads. It's going to take a long time for you instead of doing, let's say, a walking lunge, for example, or you're doing a step up exercise or back squat or deadlift. So if your main goal is to lose weight, you need to find exercises that will burn more calories during that activity. So that would be part of the process. And you can individualize this based on muscle groups. So you can start like very basic template, and Professor Marchetti has books, I have books. So we create templates like total body exercise. So for a beginner, you pick one exercise for each major muscle group. One for chest, let's say bench press, for example. One for legs could be back squat. One for back could be lat pull down. Sometimes deadlifts consider also a pull exercise. Seated row. If you have time, you add now exercise for your core, for your biceps, for your triceps. See, so you don't need to have too many exercises. You have a number of 5, no more than 8 exercises. That would be a good starting for you. Good starting point. After you pass some phases and months of training, now you individualize if you have time. Understand? Sometimes you don't even have the necessity or time. I don't know if you guys saw, but you can see it's been uploaded. We have a webinar series that we host, and we just had recently a coach that works with professional basketball players, and he has little bit of time with the players. So he doesn't have time to individualize, oh yeah, let's work your front raise with dumbbells. Understand? So we don't have time to do all those little stuff. So he picks what is the most effective. And now if you transfer to sports, like Dalton said, specific adaptation to impose demand. So you need to see, okay, what is your necessity? And you try to get exercise that will work either those joints or those muscle groups that will help you in that activity.
All right, so to build on Dr. Diaz's point, I think we should remember that in its purest form, these exercises are just a context to train either function or form, to train the muscle group, the joint, the movement pattern, right? So these exercises can always be tweaked and enhanced and broken down and put back together again, but they're just contexts to load and train muscle groups and movement, statics and dynamics of movement. So when we look at these types of contexts, these exercises, we also want to be aware not only of what we see, but also what's going on inside the human body. Dr. Dias pointed out, or I'll be either Dr. Dias or Heather, you pointed out that people copy movements that they see. I have a big concern right now, a growing concern, that many fitness Instagram people are starting to put out a lot of annotated videos and forgetting that there's a lot of stuff that could be going on inside the body that they're not aware of. So just because you go up and down in a Smith machine doesn't mean that you're activating the quads and the glutes in the way. You can actually push back and forward against that Smith machine bar, but you see the same movement, kind of like a plank. A plank is a great movement to train the stability at the core, but you could go into a plank position, arguably, and not really activate the rectus abdominis. You could relax under the arms and other muscles of the body. So we always want to be considering which muscle groups are we trying to cue to activate and relax, and then what joints are supposed to be moving in which direction along the way. And when those two things come together, that's when we have just take. You can't just have one or the other.
Oh yeah. Let me add some in this discussion. So one thing that I think is confusing, even for our students, is that in strength conditioning, most of our time, we are always transitioning between athletes and non-athletes all the time. So look at our discussion here. So we are going to beginners, and then we go to athletes. So I think we need to be more specific in terms of what we are talking about in terms of, our in terms of exercise selection. So let me give you an example. So for example, we have some studies proving that when you do bench press machine, okay, bench press with a machine, and you have both sides moving together, right? So you're doing bench press and you're a beginner, okay? So, and you're learning the process, right? So I'm not adding free weight for you now because you're a beginner, so, okay. And then you go and use a machine. But we proved that sometimes people don't put the same amount of force in both hands at the same time. And if they follow this pattern for 2-3 months, when they lay down to do a real bench press with a bar, they don't have the same pattern. They don't have the right pattern. So they push one side and then the other side, and they are more asymmetrical after these 3 initial months than if you started with a bar. So, and then we have, in my point of view, we have two different conditions. One, when you have a personal trainer or a coach and you are there one by one, right? And in this case, you don't need to use a machine just because you don't have the pattern, because you're there as a coach. On the other hand, so for example, in Brazil, we have one instructor for 50, 60 people in the gym. And then, of course, so you move these guys to machines because at least it's safer. But it's not because it's better. It's just safer. So I doubt that you didn't have this experience. So if you're listening this podcast, so when you do knee extension, for example, right? So when you do with both legs, you feel one leg more than the other one, most part of the time. So this means that you are training asymmetrically. That's the reason why sometimes we use one leg and then the other leg. because then with the same weight, of course, so you're stressing both legs with a similar level of force, right? So this is one thing. So, but on the other side, so if you think about, for example, people going to the gym to mimic athletes. For example, my question is, why are you using, doing deadlifts, you're using an alternate grip? And let me explain why I'm talking about alternate grip. Because athletes, they use alternate grip because they don't want to slip the bar, right? So we lock the bar and then we don't miss the bar, right? So, but we are talking about people, highly trained people with a lot of weight. And then you're going to the gym and you're lifting 10 pounds each side and you're using an alternate grip. So far, so good. But we know that, and we measure that here, so that when you use this alternate grip, you change your shoulder position. And this will change your the rectus spine position. So you're stressing in a not balanced way your back muscles. So, and then people say, oh, no, don't worry, I'll compensate. I just alternate again. So now you're not compensating, you're creating two problems. So, and that's the reason why, so we have to be careful if, first of all, if we're talking about athletes or non-athletes, and inside of this area, so we have athletes with different levels, right? So we have Olympic athletes, we have national athletes, we have college athletes. And on the other side, we have, again, beginners, and then intermediate and advanced. And they don't mix them. We don't mix them in terms of exercises at all. So we could use the same pattern. Oh, the guy is doing deadlift here, and the athlete is doing deadlift here, and my client is doing deadlift here. But it's not the same exercise for them. First of all, because they don't have the same neuromuscular experience. Second, they don't have the same background in terms of structure or even neuromuscular adaptations. So we have to be very careful. Because again, so we are always discussing exercise selection, but again, so where are we here, right? So in terms of, sometimes alternate grip is good for you, but sometimes it's not for another group of people. So we have to be careful with exercise selection because it's not so simple. And as Dr. Dias said, so you could use a very short routine using multi-joint exercises to spend more energy and to move more muscle mass, right? So for example, when you do bench press, you're not training only your pecs, you're training your pecs and your anterior deltoid and your triceps brachii. They are prime movers. So people think that triceps is just a secondary muscle when you do bench press, and this is not true. So we have all these exercises. So, and then when you do rows, for example, you're training your biceps, you're training your posterior deltoid, you're training your latissimus dorsi. So you're training a lot of muscles. And then you're burning more calories, of course, because you're using more muscle mass. So it's interesting, for example, for beginners or when you don't have time to train.
Dr. Marchetti is right in that we should be more specific when we talk about solutions here. Well, we shouldn't, but the practitioner should be more specific. We have to work with this general global thing. So one thing that scientists do so well and academics do so well is we classify smaller and smaller pieces of the puzzle so that we can get down to the 1 and 0 of whether or not it's happening. And one way that we classify exercises is actually as compound or isolation. And both are very unique in things like if we were to look through a mechanical lens, torque curves. So we see compound movements like squats have a relatively steady torque curve throughout the movement pattern, whereas isolation techniques like bicep curls and leg extensions sometimes have more extreme torque requirements at different portions of the rep. And then there's also a lot of different devices that we could use. You have confine the movement and some that allow on the movement. And then we have, there's a lot of different ways we could classify exercises and lenses too. One way that I would look at a movement is classifying the systems of the body and then the muscle group. What is the muscle group in charge of doing? Because muscle groups only do one thing, and that's contract, right? They stop contracting, they relax. So in order to grow a muscle group, I think stretch and squeeze. That's my go-to cue. If I were going to leave y'all with anything, stretch and squeeze the muscle group under load. That's going to be, whatever exercise does that for you is most likely going to be one of the better options for bodybuilding if you stretch and squeeze the muscle group under load. But if we're looking at improving function, that's not enough. We have to now look at stretching and squeezing the muscle group under load in order to brace, right? And keep the things that shouldn't move from moving, or move. Keep the things that are supposed to move moving the right way. So a lot of different ways to break it down. Yep, go for it. Yes.
Just to add something to the exercise selection, this 2006, when I finished my master's, I moved back to Brazil, and I started having some clients. And this couple, they were doing professionally wakeboarding, and they hired me to coach them. I was like, oh my God. All right, so go over like what Dalton said, need is analyzing, but I never did wakeboard before. So what's the best way for you to know what you need to do? Go in the waters. And then they took me to the water. They had a beach house. We stayed there the whole weekend with the boat. First, like I felt like, let's say 50, 60 times. And finally I started learning the stuff. What happened the next day? Now you see all those muscles that you never knew they were there. They all sore, your forearms,
exactly.
Your deltoid, your back, your hamstrings. So that's how you have an idea. So now one thing, oh yeah, I see it. I read in the articles, yeah, work this, work that. But now when you really have a feel and you taste, and you see the dimensions, and me in the babe step, and then those guys doing loops and flips. So I was fortunate to get to work with them for like 2 years. And Bebel, this girl, she was the first female back in 2006 to do 360 in the air, in the female. And then she won the Brazilian wakeboarding professional championship. So that's kind of like, little, just to illustrate here the situation. So, yeah, there's exercise. Yeah, it's good. For me, not optimal, but for her, necessary, and then the impact, the load that they take, on the knees, it's almost like jumping, So it's a lot of.
I grew up. I'm envious. This is envy now that you see. I grew up on a lake. I live in Baltimore now, so there's not a lot of skiing going on up here. But I grew up on a lake. I was a river rat from the Chattahoochee, and I wakeboarded, skied, kneeboarded. And yes, all of these things, it's so dynamic, and it's so, and the environment reliability is not there. So you're always pivoting, you're always responding to external stimulus, right? So it's important to consider as a coach, if you're going to train those types of individuals, not just for the sake of exercise selection, but also for tapering, right before the performance or coming back right after the performance, because depending on the duration of the event and the types of movements that they're doing, it could be extremely stressful on the body. But yeah, that's a great example of an extreme case, the wakeboarding for exercise programming. Man, that would take all day for me.
So there's an expression, and I can't tell you the context of the expression. It's just I've heard it. So they say variety is the spice of life. It could be referring to like a few different things, probably some that aren't even appropriate to talk about. But is that true as well when it comes to exercises, whether we're talking, strength training or just exercising in general? Is it important to have variety or to change up your routine? Is that something you should be mindful of?
Heather, that's very insightful. I don't know if you had that planned in the schedule, or you just came up, because you're building on what Dr. Dias just put out, which any novel stimulus on the body is going to lead to some type of adaptation, even at a very low threshold of intensity. If you've never done it before, more than likely, and I'm theorizing a little bit here, but it's going to be because different muscle groups are learning to counter other muscle groups. Different muscle groups are activating when maybe they shouldn't all the time, and they're pulling against one another to stabilize the joints and perform the movement. So it's going to require a whole lot more energy overall, and you're going to be activating muscle groups in ways that they've never been activated before in order to stabilize and move joints. So yeah, but systematic variation. We shouldn't change programs just for the heck of it. But systematic variation of the task is pretty much inherent to most programs that I'm aware of.
If Professor Marchetti can add that, so how can you utilize variability in the strength training, Professor?
Yeah, okay, so first of all, we need to understand, again, so I will insist in this part. So if you're discussing athletes or non-athletes, first of all, so we think that with athletes, we need to vary a lot, right? But depending on sport, there's no variation at all. If you talk about weightlifting or powerlifting, so there's no variation. We have a sequence of exercises that we use all the time, and we don't vary at all, right? So we don't do, so crazy exercises or different exercises with these guys, right? On the other hand, so if you're training your kid, right? So you're training your kid, for example, and you want, your kid, you want him to receive a lot of different, motor control skills and everything. So then you vary. And when we talk about strength training, so now talk about more in general, variation is not only exercise. So we don't vary only exercises, we vary load too as well. So for example, you're training bench press and you could use 8 reps max or 12 reps max and you're varying. So this is the basic concept of periodization, right? So we have 2 different ways to vary exercise, to vary when we talk about strength training, at least 2 different ways. So one is when we change the load. When I say load is everything, could be velocity, could be reps, could be how many sets, could be the range of motion. And on the other side, we have the exercise, and then you could change exercise or not. So usually when we think about these 2 things, we think that just because we are doing different exercises, this will induce more gains. And it's not always true. So we have a small number of articles about this because it's pretty new, but so we have some studies proving that if you just pick one exercise and do all sets there, you're gonna gain the same muscle mass as if you change exercise all the time. So for example, so we could have, let me give you an example of a routine. So let's imagine a bench press, incline bench press, and decline bench press. Okay, let's imagine these 3 exercises. Okay, so you're doing all these 3 exercises in one session. Okay, 3 sets each. So you're doing 9 sets total. So the range in terms of volume is between 9 and 16 sets for hypertrophy, 9 to 20 sets for hypertrophy, for example. So you're doing 9 sets. So 3, 3, and 3. So this is one option, and then you repeat this session several times in your microcycle and your mesocycle. Okay, so this is one way to do. Okay, that's the most usual way. So you go to the gym, and this is fun because you go to the gym and people think that every 3 or 4 sets you have to move to another equipment or move to another exercise, right? But we have another way to do that. That is this. So imagine now you have to do 9 sets of bench press today, 9 sets today. Okay, next session will be incline bench press, and next session will be decline bench press. So instead of using all these 3 exercises in one session and repeat in several sessions, now you're doing one exercise, 9 sets here, and then the second exercise will be during the next session, and then the next session is a different exercise. And then people say, oh, you're not varying. No, you are. Why? Because you're not thinking about the session, you're thinking about the microcycle, you're thinking about your mesocycle, you're thinking about your microcycle, you're thinking about periodization. And when we compare these 2 different ways, so all exercise in the same session, or when you split this exercise in different sessions, they have the same results if you equalize your volume. So, okay, some people could say, oh, but it's super boring if I have to go to the gym and do just one exercise, 9 sets, right? So and then we are discussing motivation. And then if you ask me, for example, Paulo, so could you go to the gym and do 9 sets of the same exercise if you know that this will work for you? I'm gonna do it, because my motivation is results. My motivation is not only, go to the gym and do a lot of different stuff and come back home. So I want results. I want, after 6 months, I want to be better after 6 months. So for me, I'm a trained person. I don't care if I need to go there and do just one exercise. Second point, so sometimes you go to the gym and it's very crowded and you don't have the option. You don't have the option to change all the time every 3-4 sets, right? And then, okay, so let's do one exercise all sets. Why not? And we need to break this idea that, this pattern that people are using at the gym nowadays is the right way to do. Sometimes and science is growing this area. And now we know that we could, for example, I could train my quads just by doing knee extension. I'm training my rectus femoris more than when you do squats, when you do lunges, when you do deadlifts, hip thrusts. So I'm training more my rectus femoris, for example, to be more specific, when I do knee extension. So why not? One day I go there and do all sets of knee extension, and then during the rest of my week, I do bench press. I do squats. I do deadlifts. So I don't need to change inside of my session. I could change in between sessions. This is another way to vary. But again, so we need to discuss. So for example, if you tell me, oh, let's do one exercise, all sets for a beginner. And then I'll say, oh, no, it's a huge no, right? So we don't do this with beginners. Why? Simple, because we need to create motivation. We need to motivate them, right? But if you're a well-trained person, so you're trained for more than 2-3 years, right? If I tell you, okay, so go there and do biceps curl, 10 sets, and this will be fine in terms of your goal, hypertrophy, for example. Why not? Because your motivation is different than a beginner, right? So your motivation is your results, not because a beginner doesn't want that, but because their mindset is different. Their mindset is different. Great. So we need to imagine, so just to finish this part, so we need to imagine that, for example, when we talk about, what is the best exercise for strength? So this question is wrong. Because when we talk about what is the best exercise for strength, strength, first of all, is a chronic adaptation, not an acute response. This means that if I apply this exercise today, it doesn't mean that I'm going to increase my force later, because strength is a chronic adaptation. It's not acute. Second, so I could do any exercise to increase my strength. It depends on how many reps and the weight that I'm lifting. So if I don't combine the number of sets, or even at least the number of repetitions and the amount of weight that I'm training, this exercise could be for strength, could be for power, could be for hypertrophy, could be for muscular endurance. Because I could do bench press 5 times and increase my strength, but at the same time, I could do bench press 10 times and increase my muscle mass. And then I could do 25 times bench press and increase my muscular endurance. And now I'm doing as fast as possible. And then using bench press, I'm improving my power capacity. So it's not the exercise itself, the problem. Mm-hmm. The problem is the combination of the exercise and all these acute variables that we call acute variables. So reps, sets, velocity, all this. So it's not so simple to discuss, what is the best exercise for strength?
Guys, I love this conversation. This is my favorite topic. That's why I invited those guys, just because of our time. Just to summarize what Professor Marchetti wanted to say is, you can choose do one exercise or 2 or 3, but the total volume that really matters. Because if you equate, so that means if you do 10 sets of one exercise, or you do 3 sets of one exercise and the rest for the other exercise, especially let's say chest area, for example, there will be almost the same results. And another question that we had that we discussed earlier with Heather about the variability. So do you really need to change every workout? No, not necessarily. What you should do, he said, short, but a microcycle usually, let's say, will be your weekly cycle. your mesocycle, let's say to make it simple, in a monthly cycle, and your macro cycle, your larger cycle, could be you want to get ready for a competition, or a normal person want to get ready for the holidays, want to get ready for like a anniversary celebration. So you pick a date and you divide those in mesocycles, so those monthly cycles. And one thing that I've been doing, I recommend my students, for years, I change every month. I create a new program for my students. And in a simple way, for example, imagine you have a routine that you like already. Let's say chest is on Monday, for example, legs is on Wednesday. So you do all machines, for example, 1 month. The next month, you use everything with free weights. In the third month, you use everything with cables and body weight. So for a normal person, just like that, with not changing anything, nothing that Marchetti said could be very complicated, and we know how to do, but if you're not a specialist, it would be hard. Now you already have a 3-month cycle. So you have a micro cycle of 3 mesocycles, just changing the modality, you see, going from machines to free weights to cables and body weight. So there's a simple way for you guys to do. Yeah, Marchetti,
Yeah.
and I have my against the wall. Go, because I still have some questions.
No, just one more thing. So if you don't know how to change your workout, so if you're listening this and you don't know how to change your workout, just change how many reps you're doing. Don't change any exercise. Use the same exercise. So some of my clients, I use the same routine the whole year, but every single month, as you said, so I'm changing the number of repetitions and of course, how much weight they are lifting. So 1 month I'm using 8 reps max. Next month I'm using 12, and then 15, and then 6. So if you don't know how to change your exercise, so just change how many reps you're doing and how much weight you're lifting. And this is enough to change your life. And even your mother will not recognize you after 1 year.
That's great.
Yeah. You can also vary the task without changing the exercise. When I think of task variation, I think of there's a lot of different ways to look at it. One is just the spatial and temporal variance, right? We can change the space that we move within or not, and then we can change the tempo, right? So if you want to really assure that you own every rep, consider, could you pause and could you start at any given point in the rep? And then could you manipulate the tempo? And then maybe slightly manipulate the spatial variables as well. And then maybe also from there, go in to add external perturbations and then force yourself to adapt to a foam pad or some other device. And then continue to try and manipulate space and time that way.
Great.
A lot of ways to vary without changing the exercise.
Yes, guys, remember, we're just talking about one modality, for example, strength training. There is aerobic training, other modalities, different exercise. So we're just giving an idea here. So the conversation could be very long. But now I have my favorite part, against the wall. I'll put you there. You got to answer quick. Okay, I start with Dalton. If you need to pick bench press or barbell curl, which one?
Both. Absolutely.
No,
every day is bench and bars, brother.
Man.
Every day. Every day is just in bars.
Yeah, I know. Paulo Marchetti, bench press or barbell curl? Only one.
I don't know. I'll bench press because I can't control load.
Okay. I'll be like Dalton. I like both, but okay. Barbell curl. All right. Another one. If you need to pick one, squat or deadlift, Dalton?
Neither. I'm just kidding. Squats. Only because of functional issues, structural issues I have. Squats.
Okay, Paulo?
Squats. Overhead squats.
Overhead squats. Okay.
Overhead squats.
Okay. I'm gonna answer my way. Okay. So.
All right.
Yeah. So if I want an exercise that is knee dominant, squat. But if I want an exercise that is hip dominant, deadlift. It depends what I want in terms of torque.
Heather, that's the problem when you get a biomechanic to come with you. See, and you're against the wall. He needs to complicate things. That's good. I like it.
I don't know. Dr. Oliver's complicating it too.
Yeah, for me, it would be trap bar deadlift. Been applying a lot, so it's a little mix of both, so trap ball and deadlift. I actually did this morning, so I really like that. Okay.
The problem is the question. The question is complicated.
I know, it's against the wall. Then I go
Question
quick.
is wrong.
Go quick. All
Well,
right, all right.
Your question is wrong.
Now
The
this
question
is
is the problem.
okay. Now look at this. What is your favorite exercise now, Dalton?
I like a good snatch. I like a good clean snatch. Yep.
Good clean snatch. I like that, Mike. I like that, Dalton. Paulo Marchetti, what's your favorite exercise? Only one.
Only one. Okay. Crunches with a machine for my abs.
Nice. Just Marchetti has
The
a book
beach.
just about core development. He has a nice book, new book, just about core development. Heather, do you have any exercise that you like more than the rest?
I like anything that's going to take you outside. So, like, I don't mind going to the gym, but there's something about being outside because I feel like you're inside like an office all day long. Like, I want my variation to be outside.
Okay.
So you figure
Anything
something
outdoors.
out.
Anything that you can do
Anything
outdoors. All right, I like that.
Can I
Okay.
add one?
Snatch
Is
it up.
sleep
go,
is
go.
an
We're almost
exercise?
done here. Go.
Sleeping is an exercise? Or no?
Yeah. All right. And the last one, this is great. What is the exercise that you hate the most? I'll start with Marchetti this time.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Let me think. Okay, I hate the most.
Yeah.
Jerk and clean.
Clean and jerk.
Clean and jerk. Yeah, sorry. Clean and jerk.
Clean and
yeah.
jerk. Heather, one that you hate the most.
I don't like squats.
Squats. Okay.
Not a fan.
Dalton.
I hate to end on the argument, but burpees because I just don't see the sense.
Oh no,
I just
man.
don't- there's so many other exercises you can do. And I just don't know what they're training. They're just bouncing around. I don't know what they're doing.
Dalton, I
And
was
they're
thinking the
exhausted,
same thing,
You can do other things to exhaust yourself. You don't have to do burpees. You can do other things that matter.
I was thinking
I want
the
you. I
same
want you.
thing.
I want to
hate
change
burpees.
burpees too. I want to change your burpees too.
Ah,
And
there
you
we
know
go.
what? You know what? Sometimes my students will listen to this. I prescribe burpees in their program. Why? Because it's an exercise that you burn a lot of calories in a short amount of time. So sometimes if they're in a rush and they don't need to have an equipment, let's say they're in the gym or in their house, they can do burpees in the living room. That's the reason I prescribe, but I don't like it, but I do
Yeah,
sometimes.
Per unit of time, I understand.
Probably you're doing this because you want them to suffer.
And they need to suffer a little.
That's the
So
reason
what's
why.
going to
the
happen
hazing.
now is on Monday, his students are going to come back and be like, well, Dr. Oliver and Dr. Marchetti are well-known experts in the field, and they are against burpees, Dr. Diaz. That's what's going to happen to
and
you.
then-
Yes. And just
I
so you
think
know,
Sorry,
Sorry,
I think
sorry.
Dr.
to those
Diaz,
students.
now, Dr. Diaz, you need to record a video doing burpees
and
and post on social media to prove that you do this right.
I'll do it.
This is
I'll
my
do it.
challenge to you.
I'll
I'm
take the
challenging
challenge.
you now.
I'll do it.
And
January.
Miss Lobo, who is our
I'll do it.
producer in the background, she's saying she hates lunges.
Yes.
So she's chiming in too, even though she's not on camera.
I'll give an option, Adriana. If you don't like lunges, try step ups on the bench. They work similar, and you can also work a little bit of legs, glutes, proprioception. You can do dumbbells, one leg at a time in the lunge, in step ups.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Bulgarians
or
are-
Bulgarian. Yes, yes.
Bulgarians are a go-to for prescription for glute development. Yep.
Perfect. And to wrap, guys, I'll start with Heather. Give me a final thoughts, motivation for our students, for everybody that's going to listen to this podcast.
So it was part of my first question to Dr. Oliver based on something he said when we first started. But there is a podcast that I watch online, and one of his phrases, and I've been incorporating it anywhere I can, is better, not perfect. And I like that for any application in life, you can apply that to. Better, not perfect.
I like that. Professor Marchetti.
Okay, so I think that if you want knowledge, you need to understand it. You need to change your mindset, and you need to be patient. So it's like martial arts, right? So we don't go from white belt to black belt in 6 months. So people now are trying to get everything super fast, and to increase your level of knowledge, you need to be more patient. So for these new students nowadays, just let me quote something here. Can I? I'm using here my cell phone. So for those who don't know where they are going, any road will do.
I like that, Marchetti. Very good, guys.
I was
Dalton,
prepared.
my friend.
So these are just closing comments.
Mhm.
I'll build off of both of those and say that complicating it, the one thing that I look for in a program is progression. If there's constant progress, and it doesn't have to be every single day, although I try to PR every day because that's just me. But if there's some type of progression toward the goal, then you're probably doing the right thing. From there, it's just refining the details.
Amazing, amazing. And to finish my thing, I keep telling my students, you gotta go up and do it. You can't just be here thinking, listen to all those thoughts that we gave you, all this information, because we've been doing this for years and we love this. You can see that we could stay here all day talking. It's just a passion. You need to create that passion. If you create that in any field you go, you're going to be successful. So don't think about like, oh, I want to make money, I want to do this. No, find your passion and then just go for it. And I guarantee you that you're going to be successful. So it was a great pleasure to have you guys. Amazing. Dalton, Professor Marchetti, Heather, I give you the word.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us. I know anytime we get together, like we just can go on, and you guys have shared so much important information, and hopefully I hope the takeaway is to the audience is that there is more involved than you realize when it comes to exercises and that looking for that greatness within it. And hopefully you all take into consideration looking for the professional like these gentlemen are educating here at Keiser University, and also with Dr. Marchetti at the University of California. They are putting out the proper professionals that are helping you guys reach your goals. So gentlemen, thank you all for joining us. If you guys have enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and follow, and we'll catch you on the next one.
All right, amigos. Bye-bye.
Thank you for journeying with us today on Keiser Voices, the story of success. As we close this chapter, remember, every story has its next page.